All right, 1 Samuel 14, let's call this one Saul at his worst, and subtitle either appetite or belly, referring to that New Testament passage in Philippians where Paul says their God is their belly. And that in a lot of ways seems to point back to what we're seeing here in chapter 14, where his son Jonathan once again is going to initiate a great victory. This time, he is not even going to tell anyone. He's going up against the Philistines with just his armor bearer, and they're going to come up on the Philistines, not haphazardly, looking for a sign from God, much like Gideon, except he's not going to need a repeated encouragement. He's simply going to say to his armor bearer, look, we're going to show ourselves to them, and if they say, come on over, we're going over, because we're going to take that as a sign that God has delivered them into our hand. But if they say, wait, we'll be right over, we're going to wait for them to come right over, but we might not be here when they get here because I'm not so sure. In that circumstance, God has given us the battle. Might sound silly, but understand, to the degree that we have seen men take chances consistent with the things that God has already told them were in line for either them as individuals or for his people Israel, we have seen God answer a request for a sign. Am I going in the right direction? And so understand, he's already told Jonathan's father Saul that I want you to deliver my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines. That doesn't mean they can do whatever they want, as we've already seen. When Saul offered up the unlawful sacrifice, he got consequences, but there are times when God is willing to answer a prayer for direction, and this is one. So we're going to see Jonathan with his armor bearer kill about 20 men on their own. God is going to step in, throw the Philistines into a panic. Then he's going to cause the ground to quake, which is going to cause them to panic even more, at which point they are going to go into a confusion, which, much like previous battles we've seen in the book of Judges and Joshua, the enemy, this time the Philistines, are then going to begin to turn their swords on each other. At which point the rest of Israel is going to find its courage, come out of its caves, and begin to rout the Philistines. And so what we're going to see is Jonathan initiating a great victory. How do they know? Because it could have been the fact that since Jonathan left without telling anyone, they didn't figure it out. Well, Saul's going to take account. Who's not here? He's going to find out it's his own son and his armor bearer. So they're going to find out pretty quick that Jonathan had something to do with it. But the reason why Saul's appetite is going to be a problem is, much like Jephthah, he is going to make a tragic vow in this circumstance. And it's going to have to do with his appetite. He is going to want vengeance on his enemies so badly, and the battle is going to seem so urgent that he is going to curse anyone in Israel that eats before he can be avenged on his enemies, as the chapter is going to say. And they are in a short order going to pass by some honey that's just dripping on the ground. They won't even have to work for it, which is probably going to make it even worse. That anybody who eats is going to be cursed. But here's the weird thing. Saul is going to inquire of the Lord, and he is going to not get an answer, and that's going to provoke him to know that something's gone wrong. So they're going to cast lots the way that God has told them to help understand what's going on in a situation where they lack understanding. And he's going to find out by process of elimination that Jonathan did eat honey, not understanding that his own appetite for victory over his enemies has caused him to make a rash vow that was short-sighted in three ways. One, not everybody's necessarily going to hear it, and it catches his own son in that predicament. Second, the people are going to get tired. They're doing physical labor, and so he's not really considering their needs and the needs of the people who are fighting for him. And third, when they finally get to eat, they're going to eat in violation of the law because they're so hungry they're not going to prepare the food the way it's supposed to be prepared. And so in Saul satiating his own appetite for vengeance, basically leading people who are pretty much fighting his battles for him, he's not going to pay attention to detail in the way that we talked about when we first met him, back when his servant was the one who had the idea and the wisdom to go see the prophet, the knowledge to know where the prophet is, and the good sense to have enough provision to actually give the prophet a gift in return for his kindness. And once again, we're seeing Saul being short-sighted in a way that hurts the people around him more than it hurts him, which is why we often say God's best to you as you go forward in him, God willing this time, not allowing your appetite for the things that you want to drive you to starve your allies or your family of the things they might need.